Good evening. It's Tuesday, 28th of January 2025, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Flights resume. India and China to resume direct flights after nearly 5 years amidst thawing tensions. Arctic defense. Denmark announces $2 billion Arctic defense plan amidst rising geopolitical interest. Gaming evolution. Corsair Games redefine gaming as the industry surpasses film and music industries combined.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Amarsha Fernando.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us on World News Tonight. In a significant step towards rebuilding ties, India and China have agreed to resume direct passenger flights after nearly 5 years. The decision comes amidst improving relations between the two Asian giants who have been at odds since the COVID-19 pandemic and a deadly border clash in 2020.
India and China have agreed to resume direct passenger flights after nearly 5 years of suspension. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, around 500 flights operated monthly between the two nations. But services were halted in 2020 due to the pandemic and later tensions from a deadly border clash. While flights to Hong Kong eventually resumed, connection to the mainland China remained frozen amid strained ties. Recent high-level meetings under the BRICS framework have helped to thaw relations, prompting both governments to move forward with reopening air travel. Officials from both sides are now set to negotiate the technical framework to restart services.
In Sudan, the tide may have been turned in nearly 2-year civil war as the army celebrates the significant gains in Khartoum. Leaders of the Sudanese army addressed reporters, marking what they called a critical turning point in their battle against the Parliamentary Rapid Support Forces.
Cheers rang out in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, at the weekend, as military leaders hailed a turning point in the civil war. Soldiers celebrated from their army headquarters, which had been besieged by paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, since April 2023. Having made rapid gains, the army and allies recaptured much of the city of Bahri, north of Khartoum, along with the Al Jaili refinery last week. This set the stage for the breaking of the siege on Friday, after an almost 2-year war. While the army has gained control of its headquarters, the RSF remains widely deployed in Khartoum. It also controls much of Darfur and wide swathes of the Kordofan region, both to the west of the capital. The army has, in recent months, retaken several parts of central Sudan and remains in control of the north and east. Analysts say the military may wait to recapture the rest of the capital before engaging in negotiations over power. The RSF has proposed its own government, while army leaders have rejected the inclusion of the RSF in the Sudanese state. The war has displaced more than 12 million people, while plunging half the population into hunger, for which both the RSF and army have been blamed.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, survivors warned against the global rise of anti-Semitism and extremism. World leaders including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky attended the solemn ceremony at the site of one of the Holocaust's greatest atrocities.
Survivors of the Nazi Holocaust on Monday marked the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the notorious Auschwitz concentration camp. The ceremony was held at the site established in Poland by occupying German forces, first as a forced labor camp and then as a key part of the Nazi machinery devoted to exterminating European Jews. More than 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, perished here in gas chambers or from starvation, cold, and disease. Those attending the commemoration included German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Britain's King Charles, French President Emmanuel Macron, Polish President Andrzej Duda, and many other leaders. They did not make speeches, but rather listened, for perhaps the last time, to those who suffered and witnessed firsthand one of humanity's greatest atrocities. The survivors warned against a global rise in anti-Semitism and against intolerance. Before the ceremony, King Charles visited a Jewish community center in the Polish city of Krakow. That remembrance of crimes committed in the name of Nazi notions of racial superiority has itself become an acutely political issue in recent years with the rise of far-right parties across Europe. Elon Musk delivered a video address to supporters of Germany's far-right Alternative für Deutschland political party. AfD is running second in polls for the February 23rd election on a platform that includes playing down historical guilt for the Holocaust.
And let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. And welcome back. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has proposed a unique prisoner exchange, offering to release 2 captured North Korean soldiers in exchange for Ukrainian soldiers held by Russia. This comes amidst growing speculations about North Korea's involvement in the conflict.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukraine is willing to exchange 2 North Korean soldiers captured in the Kursk region of Russia for Ukrainian soldiers held captive by Moscow. In a video shared on social media, the North Korean prisoners of war claimed that they were misled by their commanders, with one saying he believed he was on a training exercise. This marks the first time Ukraine has captured North Korean soldiers, raising questions about their role in Russia's war effort. While the Kremlin has expressed interest in potential exchanges, it stopped short of confirming the authenticity of Zelensky's proposal. Neither Russia nor North Korea have officially acknowledged the presence of North Korean troops in Russia.
And over in Gaza, tens of thousands of Palestinians are making their way back to their homes after months of displacements in temporary shelters. The return comes as a part of a ceasefire agreement following a 15-month-long war, but many face grim realities of returning to bombed-out ruins.
Twins Mahmoud and Ibrahim Al-Atut hug after a year of separation. Palestinians streamed back into northern Gaza on Monday, with Israel giving them the green light to return as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Mohammed Audi reunited with his parents and brother as they returned after being displaced for more than a year.
It's better than the whole world. It's a great victory to see my mother, father and brother. Praise to God. I have been away from them for 1 year and 4 months. I was alone in the north here. They were all in the south.
Northern Gaza's devastated landscape of crushed concrete and twisted metal is where some of the most intense Israeli airstrikes and battles with militants took place. Mohammed Arifi said being away was like death.
When I get back to Gaza City, I will come back to life. I swear to God, the feeling is indescribable. To see my family, my people, my neighborhood, where I was raised and where I lived.
Under the terms of the ceasefire, residents of northern Gaza were due to return at the weekend. But Israel said Palestinian militant group Hamas had breached the deal by failing to release civilian female hostage Arbel Yehud in a second exchange at the weekend. So, as displaced Gazans slept on the road waiting to be allowed to head north, Israel kept its forces deployed in the Netzarim corridor that separates the north from the rest of the enclave. That was until Qatari mediators resolved the dispute late Sunday. Hamas agreed to release Yehud and 2 other hostages 2 days before the next scheduled release. The group said on Monday it had also handed over to mediators a list showing that 25 Israeli hostages are still alive, out of 33 scheduled for release. The war has killed at least 47,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza's health ministry. It displaced most Gazans, many several times, including 650,000 people forced to leave northern Gaza. The ceasefire deal also requires 600 truckloads of aid to be allowed into Gaza every day of the initial 6-week ceasefire, including 50 carrying fuel. Half should head north, where experts have warned famine is imminent.
Denmark is making a significant move to strengthen its military presence in the Arctic, announcing a $2 billion boost in defense spending. This decision comes amidst growing geopolitical interest in the region, particularly from the United States, with Greenland at the center of attention.
Denmark announced on Monday a $2 billion boost in defence spending to increase its military presence in the Arctic. It comes after pressure from US President Donald Trump, who has shown renewed interest in controlling Greenland, the semi-autonomous Danish territory and strategically important island. Denmark is responsible for Greenland's security and defence, but has limited military capabilities on the enormous island, regarded as a security black hole. At present, Denmark's capacities include 4 aging inspection vessels, 1 surveillance plane, and a dozen dog sled patrols. The new deal includes funding 3 new Arctic Navy vessels, long-range surveillance drones, as well as satellite surveillance, Denmark's defence minister said at a press conference. Denmark's political parties agreed to set aside more money for the Arctic in a deal to be presented in the first half of the year. The US military has a permanent presence in northwestern Greenland, a strategic location for its ballistic missile early warning system.
A potential trade war between the United States and Colombia has been narrowly avoided after high-stakes standoff over deported migrants. The resolution comes after Colombia reversed a decision to block US military flights, averting economic retaliation.
The U.S. and Colombia pulled back from the brink of a trade war on Sunday. U.S. President Donald Trump had threatened tariffs and sanctions on Colombia for refusing to accept military flights carrying deportees as part of his sweeping immigration crackdown. But late on Sunday, the White House said Colombia had agreed to accept the migrants after all, and Washington would not impose those penalties.
El gobierno de Colombia.
Colombian Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo on Sunday said his country's government had, quote, gotten over its impasse with Washington. Earlier, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro had condemned the military deportation flights and said that he would never carry out a raid to return handcuffed Americans to the U.S. However, he also said that Colombia would welcome home deported migrants on civilian planes and offered his presidential plane to facilitate their, quote, dignified return. The Colombian statement did not specify whether the agreement it had struck with the U.S. included military flights, but it did not contradict the White House announcement. It added that Murillo and Colombia's ambassador to the United States will travel to Washington in coming days for follow-up meetings. The use of U.S. military aircraft to carry out deportation flights is unusual. Some of them carried out 2 flights to Guatemala on Friday, while Mexico also refused a request last week to let a U.S. military aircraft land with migrants. Trump has said he is thinking about imposing 25% duties on imports from Canada and Mexico on February 1st to force further action against illegal immigrants and fentanyl flowing into the U.S.
Let's move on to a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. The gaming industry has grown to surpass both the film and music industries combined, with new trends continually shaping the landscape. One such trend is the rise of cozy games, designed to offer players a relaxing and low-stress experience. But these games may have more to offer than just a soothing pastime.
This is Nori, and this is Reutersville. We are inside a Reuters simulation of a cozy game. A cozy game is defined by its easy, relaxing nature and constructive rather than destructive challenges. Since 2020, this gaming subgenre has seen a significant increase in popularity. And some recent research backs up what some have long suspected, that welcoming, cute, and low-skill video games could be an antidote to stress and anxiety. In Reutersville on this cold winter night, Nori must clean their room before they can settle in with their own cozy game. The subgenre was kickstarted by games like the farming simulation Harvest Moon in 1996. And the cozy game worlds are often centered around social connection and building relationships. Much of the world shut down in 2020, there was an unprecedented spike in gaming. One UK study aggregated data on the 500 most popular games globally on the online gaming platform Steam. By June 2020, they saw a 23% jump from the previous year. And players say the feeling of community transcends the game itself. There's been a rise of social media influencers in the space, like Cozy K and Iona. They've amassed hundreds of thousands, even millions of followers. And these games can also provide a space for people who struggle to connect with others offline. Video games haven't typically been considered a force for good, though. In 2019, gaming disorder, characterized by impaired control over gaming, was listed in the International Classification of Diseases. But after a 2-year study in Japan from 2020 to 2022, researcher Hiroyuki Egami found that owning a game console and increased gameplay reduced psychological distress and improved life satisfaction among participants. Other studies also point to a shift in perceptions of gaming. In a survey of 80 undergraduates published in 2021, he found that casual gaming had the same effect on blood pressure and heart rate as a 20-minute meditation session. In cozy games, it's virtually impossible to lose, and they don't require extreme skill. Some can help players tackle darker subjects. In Spiritfarer, the gamer plays a ferrymaster to the deceased, exploring death and grief. For many, cozy games become a sanctuary. They're a place to escape, unwind, and experience a sense of connection in a world that can sometimes feel overwhelming.
And finally tonight, New Zealand is opening its doors to a new wave of travels, relaxing visa rules to attract digital nomads who work remotely while exploring the country. The move aims to boost tourism and help the economy recover from the impacts of the pandemic.
New Zealand has relaxed its visa requirements, allowing remote workers to stay in the country for up to 90 days while working for foreign employers. Immigration Minister Erica Stanford said the change would encourage visitors to extend their stays, leading to increased spending in the country. The move comes as New Zealand grapples with an economic recession and seeks to revive its tourism industry, which was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. The new rule applies to all visitors, including those who tourists and individuals visiting family or partners on long-term permits. Stanford emphasized the government's openness to welcoming digital nomads, hoping the initiative will bring both cultural and economic benefits.
That's all we have for you today on our rundown on World News Tonight this evening. We will meet you again tomorrow with more updates across the globe. And stay tuned as we've got Anuradhi Vikramasinghe join you next on the Nightly Business Report. And before we end tonight, we'll leave you with the visuals of the Dio Haute Quarter Spring Summer 2025 show. And thank you for watching and have a good night.